your cabinet made the change, Minister. So you're the one who made the change just in time to be able to make this purchase so that you could say you didn't hear anything and you didn't say anything.
The CBC has proven this morning that they are still trying to do Trudeau's bidding. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today's top story here. We got a radio interview with a professor brought on by the CBC to do an interview about international students, and he was abruptly cut off after he started ripping Trudeau and the Liberals on their immigration policies. Not only that, we got the Liberals caught rigging the political system to benefit themselves. We've also got David Menzies from Rebel News getting arrested again. So let's jump into this. So who we're talking about here is Mikhail Skuterat, who's the professor of economics at Waterloo University. This guy's been following Canada's immigration system for the last couple decades. He's brought on by CBC and they don't like his answers. What you're going to notice here is the interviewer keeps trying to paint this picture that the issue with immigration and universities taking advantage of students, it's a provincial thing. It's not Justin Trudeau. It's not Mark Miller. It's not Sean Fraser. It's none of them. It's all a provincial problem. And he pushes back and says, no, you're wrong. In honor of Remembrance Day, I'll be playing some footage from today's ceremony over top of the podcast as there's no video.
So you heard there both Carleton and Algonquin draw a link between declining international enrollment and the government's new policies. What do you make? Is that a fair correlation?
Well, there's undoubtedly been changes in the policy that have happened at the same time as we're seeing these declining international student numbers. So it's pretty tough not to believe that they're related. No question.
So the first little question there, she notices that he pushes back. So then she's going to double down on Carleton University here because their numbers have less international students than most of them. So she's trying to use that as a smoking gun, and he calls her out on this.
Something you're hearing from other institutions, other colleges, other universities?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say, there are certainly post-secondary institutions across the country that are going to be hit by this much harder than the colleges and universities in Ottawa.
Can you compare? I mean, Algonquin and Carleton, are they more or less, and how significantly different than other schools?
So, the data is produced with a bit of a lag, but at least up until 2022, there's no question that the Ottawa post-secondary institutions were not relying as much on international students to grow revenue as many other schools across the country, especially in centers that, just typically struggle just to attract domestic students. But in fact, the largest one is by far has been Conestoga College in the city where I live.
Just to break this down a little bit, so a couple months ago, Mark Miller came out and said that they're going to be reducing the international students cap because, it's destroying Canada. As it says here, there's something expected to result in an eventual 175,000 drop in permits. So last January, Mark Miller announced a limit of 360,000 new permits for 2024 controlled through a cap. This came solely from just a massive pushback as they're breaking Canada with this stuff. So this drop, though, it's not enough. It's just something to say that they're doing something. It's like if a robber robs a bank and steals $100 and gives you $10 back. That's what we've got here.
I have a couple of numbers here just to help folks understand. In the 2021-2022 academic year, Carleton's population of, say, 31,000 students, of that, 4,400 were international. Ottawa U, of their 48,000 students, almost 10,000 were international students. At Algonquin, of their 22,000 students, almost 3,000 were international students. So it's I don't know how you characterize that. Is that a little bit? Is that a lot? What do you think?
So, across the country, the average is about a fifth of students are international students. That's across colleges and universities.
A fifth is what he said on average. And the Carleton University, the example she chose here, 10% out of 80,000 is about 1/8. It was much less than what the average is. But it's selective journalism. That's what CBC is here.
But there are many schools that came to a point that they were almost exclusively international students. A school like Conestoga College has seen incredible growth in their total enrollments, but zero growth in their domestic student enrollments. So it's just all driven by international students.
Drilling down, say the average is, say, 20% or 1 in 5. Those folks carry a much higher burden in terms of the amount of tuition they pay. Do we know what percentage of tuition they're paying?
Well, so the percentage of the total revenue from this institution that comes from international students will vary on how, what percentage of their students are internationals. But we do know that, on average across the country. So we don't know this for colleges because colleges don't reveal their tuition rates to Statistics Canada, but the universities do. And we know at universities, the differential between the tuition rates of domestic students and internationals has grown just consistently over the past decade, and is now they're paying on average 4 to 5 times as much.
Yeah. I'm wondering if I could just ask you this. To what degree has the financial health of colleges and universities been relying on these international students?
I mean, for sure they have. If these institutions, especially the colleges, are struggling to fill their seats with domestic students, and now you provide them with, a pool of applicants who they can charge whatever they want, unlike the domestic students, then undoubtedly they're going to be incentivized to dip into that new applicant pool of foreign students. The federal government encouraged them to do that. That was very much part of the federal government's international education strategy. And there was no checks and balances on the visas they were issuing. They were rubber stamping them. And so there's no question that was what the system wanted them to do.
But what responsibility do the schools have in planning their whole fiscal future around a program that could change and did change with the prevailing political winds?
She's so desperately trying to push Trudeau's narrative here. Get that mandate that slides across the desk that says, make sure Trudeau doesn't look bad. That's what this is. It's disgraceful.
The federal government in Canada is responsible for immigration. The federal government's international education strategy in 2019 and these separate programs that streamlined applications to colleges across Canada were encouraging the colleges to do this. They were telling the colleges, we want you to do this. So how this is the fault of the colleges, I think, is just politically convenient for the federal government. I have been watching this for 20 years. There's absolutely no question in my mind that the responsibility for managing the immigration system lies with the federal government that issues the study permits. I'm
surprised that you don't think that some of these schools bear some responsibility. I mean, you give as an example Conestoga College that had something like 70% of its student body was international students, that they could have foreseen that if the program got tightened, and it has every time the government changes, why wouldn't that school see that problem coming down Main Street?
Just still trying to blame the schools. It's Justin Trudeau bringing in too many people. Weak mandates.
I don't think it's their responsibility to see that. What the federal government is encouraging the college to sell is immigration, a pathway to immigration. The fact that they can charge 5 times as more is not because students are paying for the education they provide. It is that migrant students are buying the immigration, the pathway to PR status. The federal government has been told repeatedly within their own bureaucracy, within their own employees, they've been told that this is not sustainable, that you are growing the international student population far faster than your permanent residency caps will allow you to absorb them. They were told this 3 years ago, and they ignored it. So there's absolutely no question that the responsibility for managing the intake of these individuals and the transition of what we call a 2-step immigration system towards PR is the responsibility of the federal government.
Mikhail, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
She just ends the interview. It's like, that's not enough. You keep blaming Trudeau. We'll just cut that off. So if you look at his actual post too, says here, a disappointing interview on CBC Ottawa this morning. Host was determined to push me into corner to say that responsibility for unsustainable growth in foreign students lies with provinces, not feds. Interview ended abruptly when I refused. It seems very much that interview was planned to go much further than it did. We look at it here. It's 7 minutes. Who calls in a professor to have a 7-minute interview? A little bizarre, right? Something else to note about this, you got to think about where the money is flowing. Money is essentially what affects all of these politicians' decisions. We already know Justin Trudeau has a real estate development company and thus increasing the immigration, increasing the foreign students, people to come in, buying places, buying land. increases the prices astronomically. And since his dad likely passed down a ton of land to him and his brother, and that's what's in the real estate development company, I'm suspecting, we already know that's a major incentive for Justin Trudeau to keep the prices high. But you got to wonder, Justin Trudeau, Mark Miller, Sean Fraser, all these guys, other liberals, do they own shares in these colleges? Do they have incentives in these universities? Are they getting kickbacks? Are they making money from having so many international students going to these schools and paying 5 times the rate? I went to Vancouver Film School. It's one of the, if not the most expensive film school in Canada. When I went through, it was $24,000 or for a 1-year program. This is back in 2002. Back then, I believe it was about $40,000 for an international student. So it wasn't quite double. These schools are charging, which is right out of his mouth, 5 times the rate, the Canadian rate, to bring in these students. He's right. They're essentially buying a path to immigration. That's what this is. It's taking advantage of people. It's causing misery and suffering. It's deplorable. And it's also deplorable here that the CBC, when they don't like what he's saying, which is true, they just cut him off. But what else would we expect from the CBC? So next up, we got this one. It says, breaking news, Rebel News journalist David Menzies arrested by Toronto police while reporting on dual demonstrations for and against Israel in Toronto. So it looks like Trudeau and Liberals don't want him reporting on this. So he's right here. We'll make this big. Yeah, he's right here. You'll see him pop out here, right there in that tan colored trench coat and his signature hat there. How many times have they arrested this guy? It must be 4 or 5 now, and every single time, as far as I know, they don't press any charges. None of the charges hold because what they're doing here is against the law. And not only that, they always sue the government, aka taxpayers having to pay for this after these stupid police keep doing this stuff. This is getting monotonous. They don't seem to like journalists who tell the truth. This is so absurd. They arrest him for practicing journalism. And once again, press freedom is under attack. This is the 5th time Menzies has gotten arrested this year. So 5th time, apparently. Why is he getting arrested for reporting? I mean, considering what is coming out of these people's mouths in the streets, you'd think they would arrest some of those people, but not in Trudeau's Canada. Next up, we've got a mother of 2 here who makes 6 figures and can barely pay her bills. This is an interesting breakdown of her home finances.
So I just want to illustrate how you can be making 6 figures and still be struggling financially. I live in a medium-sized city in Ontario, Canada. I work full-time. My husband stays at home full-time with the kids. I'm not going to go into too many details to protect his privacy, but basically, if he could be working, he would be. So my gross monthly salary is about $9,000 after taking off taxes, benefits, paying into my pension and union dues. I'm taking home about $5,800 a month. And then I also receive Canada Child Benefit for about $700. So in total, my net income monthly is about $6,500. For fixed expenses, our rent is $26.65 a month. Comparing that to an average 1-bedroom apartment in our city now, which is about $2,200, it's not really a lot in comparison for a family of 4 and having enough room for us. Car payment is $660 a month. That is for a used Kia Sedona. Car insurance for my husband and I is about $420. Utilities are about $300 a month. Daycare is $320. Now,
$420 for car insurance for 2 people sounds outrageous. Here in British Columbia on Vancouver Island, I pay about $100 a month. I do know when I moved from the mainland over to British Columbia, I got a huge discount. So yeah, I guess seems the major cities, including Vancouver, and I'm guessing she's in the Toronto area, really ripping people off on the car insurance.
Well, even though my husband does stay home full-time with the kids, we do send our older daughter to daycare 2 days a week. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details, but it's something essential for our family. And my student line of credit, I pay $200 a month. I have paid off all of my government student loans, but I'm still working on this bank loan. So monthly fixed expenses in total is about $45.65, and then going into variable expenses. So we do spend about $1,200 a month on groceries. So that's food for 4 people. Both my daughters are still in diapers. We're buying formula. We're buying all those other baby essentials. We do all of our groceries at Walmart. We don't buy anything fancy. We try to buy store brand products as much as possible, and everything is just still insanely expensive. And then we also spend about $300 a month in gas. So just those 2 variable expenses added up with the fixed expenses, that's about $6,065 a month, leaving us with just over $400 for our monthly expenses. And this doesn't even include if we would need clothes, shoes, medicine, toiletries, any of that. And usually if I do have anything left at the end of the month, it goes right towards my credit card. So currently there is absolutely no room for saving money at all, working towards buying a house or for a better future for our family. So that's just the reality.
This is sad. When she said buying a house, her voice quivered. I bet if they asked Stephen Guilbeault to respond to this video, he'd probably tell her to buy an electric car. You can save that $300 a month in gas. Just buy yourself a $66,000 car. The comments here are kind of mixed. You got ones like this. It says if you can't live on six figures, you're doing something wrong. What's important to note about her budget here is the, what was it, $2,665 for rent, when she said a one bedroom is like $2,100. So essentially, if she gets kicked out of that unit, then she would be going up to like $4,000 a month for rent, I'm guessing, which would be a comparable unit. Essentially, like, this would be forcing this family to move. And really, if things are that tight, you might want to consider moving somewhere else. Everyone's got to make that decision if they want to suffer in the place they're living or move somewhere dramatically cheaper. Dramatically is a little relative in Canada. There are definitely some more rural places you have to find a job and then move out there. It's hard with a family of four. You're uprooting 2 kids out of their school. It's a big hassle. This is Trudeau's Canada, folks. As much misery as possible. Think about those making $50K before tax. How are they surviving? My wife and I make almost 6 figures combined, and it's getting hard. I've been saying this for a long time. We used to put $5K away a month in savings and $2 to $3K a month in stocks. Now every single penny from my paycheck is consumed, taxes, mortgage, insurance, food necessities, in that order. Now we put 0 away for the last 3 years. Justin Trudeau, folks, he's essentially used us to get rich. His real estate is exploding in value, and we're all paying the price. Jumping over to this clip from Michael Barrett, it says the Liberals are caught rigging the rules. So this is talking about the $9 million NYC apartment for Tom Clark. The Liberals changed the rules in 2019 so then they could buy a more expensive apartment for Tom Clark.
And therefore, no.
These are Treasury Board rules that your government changed. Of course, you raised the limit just in time to, of course, buy this luxury condo for Justin Trudeau's buddy Tom Clark.
I'm sorry, but that's false.
Now,
that was done in 2019.
Now, right. Your cabinet made the change, Minister. So you're the one who made the change just in time to be able to make this purchase so that you could say you didn't hear anything and you didn't say anything.
That's
How many
also
heads of mission have been, quote, instrumental in purchasing luxury condos?
So this is a decision that is always taken by the department. And so I know that you've been doing character assassination against Tom Clark, and that's really sad because when you don't have your facts straight, usually what you do, you resort to personal attacks.
What's really sad, Minister, is that Canadians are struggling just to get by, lined up at food banks in record numbers, and you seem to have checked out on any accountability that you should be exercising in your role as minister. And we see that instead of helping Canadians, you're helping well-connected Liberal insiders.
What's unbelievable about this is when he points it out, she says false.
That was done in 2019.
Now, right.
That was done in 2019. Your Honor, I swear I stole that money in 2019. It's not valid anymore. That theft is not valid anymore. That's the kind of stupid argument we're getting here from Melanie Joly. This woman is so pompous and arrogant. She's an absolute buffoon. Or as Jeff has put it here, get this immature, unqualified, cringy woman out of office. Thank you for holding her accountable. Why are these traitors not charged and facing prison time is beyond me. It shows that our system is broken and corruption is allowed. She's a traitor to Canada. She should have a good look at the 19,000 people that showed up for Ugly Potato Day. Shame on her. She should be fired. The Liberals change the rules for whatever they want to do. It's just like they're trying to change the election to get all the other MPs their pensions, thus keeping the support of them to keep voting with them, even though I'm sure most of those Liberals know they should be voting for most of that crap they're voting for to support Trudeau. They want that lucrative pension. They're all a bunch of sellout losers.